On the morning of August 26, 2015, in Virginia, it started out like any other routine assignment for a local newsroom. An early call time, gear loaded into the car, microphones checked, live shot ready to go. WDBJ reporter Allison Parker and her photographer Adam Ward drove out to Bridgewater Plaza near Smith Mountain Lake for what seemed like a simple, upbeat segment, an on-air interview with local Chamber of Commerce Director Vicki Gardner to promote an upcoming event at the lake. It was the kind of live hit that usually disappears into the background of a morning broadcast. A smile, a few questions, a quick community update, and then on to the next story. At 6:45 a.m., the live shot begins. The framing is steady, the audio is clear, and the tone is that familiar morning TV calm. Everything designed to feel normal and reassuring. And then, in a matter of seconds, the atmosphere changes in the most brutal way possible. The interview is suddenly interrupted. Loud pops cut through the audio, the camera jolts, and the feed drops out. Back in the studio, the anchors freeze, trying to keep their composure while realizing this isn't a technical glitch. It's something else, something far worse, unfolding in real time. For the audience at home, it's the kind of moment that doesn't even feel real at first, because live television isn't supposed to become the scene of a violent attack. But that's exactly what happened. Within minutes, the reality becomes clear. Allison Parker and Adam Ward have been shot. Both will die from their injuries. Vicki Gardner is badly wounded, but she survives. And what makes this story even more disturbing is that it wasn't random, and it wasn't an accident. Investigators quickly identify the shooter as Vester Lee Flanagan, a former employee of the same station who used the professional name Bryce Williams. He wasn't a stranger who appeared out of nowhere. He understood the environment, the routines, and how these live segments were set up. He knew exactly when and where to strike for maximum impact. As the background comes out, it paints a picture of years of conflict and instability, a career marked by terminations, reports of aggressive behavior in the workplace, and repeated clashes with coworkers and supervisors. At WDBJ, he'd been fired earlier after complaints and internal concerns. And looking back, it's hard not to see a pattern of resentment building over time, until it finally exploded into something irreversible. But the most chilling question isn't just how it happened, it's how it got to that point. Because what truly shocks people is the way violence broke into a space that feels safe by default. A public location, a simple morning interview, a routine live segment where nobody is expecting the worst. After the shooting, the situation turns into a nationwide manhunt. After that morning, it also became a reminder of something much darker. When you're on live TV, you're not just reporting on reality. You're standing right inside it, and sometimes, without warning, reality can strike back in front of everyone.
On July 27, 2007, in Phoenix, Arizona. It was supposed to be just another day of live TV tracking a police chase. A stolen flatbed truck, cruisers right behind it, and helicopters overhead, giving viewers that all-seeing angle from above. Within minutes, the story spread fast, and something happened that still feels unreal today. There wasn't just one news helicopter in the sky, but several from different stations, all circling to get the best shot. At home, people watched the suspect's every move, listened to the running commentary, and settled into that familiar, we're watching it all unfold feeling. But while everyone's attention was locked on the streets, the real disaster was building somewhere almost nobody was looking, up in the air. Then, without warning, two live feeds cut out almost at the exact same moment. For viewers, it was a confusing split second. Was it a technical issue, a signal problem, or something worse?
We don't know what has just happened right there. It looks like the police have closed in on him. We don't know what exactly has transpired between the police.
And then the first reactions came in, both from the studio and from other crews in the sky. Two helicopters had collided mid-air and gone down. It was a sudden, violent tragedy, and it happened while the country was effectively watching live. The two aircraft were local news choppers, one tied to the ABC 15 station, and the other to KTVK, a major independent station in Phoenix. 4 people were killed: the 2 pilots, and the 2 photographers, onboard professionals who are used to working under pressure, flying low, moving fast, and narrating events in real time. And there's one detail that makes it even more unsettling. Far worse. In the days that followed, investigators tried to answer the obvious question: how do 2 experienced news crews, doing their jobs in broad daylight, end up occupying the same piece of sky at the same time? The official findings highlighted a key factor. In situations like this, multiple helicopters operating close together, traditional air traffic control separation often isn't the main safeguard. Instead, the pilots are operating largely under visual flight rules, meaning it's on them to constantly scan, maintain awareness, and see and avoid other aircraft. On paper, that's manageable, especially for seasoned pilots. In real life, the workload that day was massive, tracking the chase below, monitoring multiple radio channels, coordinating with the newsroom, managing the camera platform, choosing angles, and often speaking live while all of it was happening at once. When you stack all of that together, it only takes a few seconds, one brief lapse in situational awareness, for a small mistake to become irreversible. The hardest part of this story is that it wasn't some dramatic mechanical failure or a cinematic twist. It was the real-world consequence of competitive live coverage, where every second matters, every decision is made on the fly, and multiple stations are fighting for the clearest, most compelling shot. But out of something so tragic, there was at least one concrete change. Many stations began shifting their approach, relying more on shared aerial pools and better coordination, reducing the need to pack multiple helicopters into the same airspace at the same time. And in that moment, when the signal cuts out and the studio falls silent, you realize just how thin the line can be between covering a story and becoming the story.
On January 28, 1986, millions of people across the United States stopped to watch a space launch live on television. And this wasn't just any mission. The Space Shuttle Challenger was about to lift off with a 7-person crew, and for the first time, a teacher, Krista McAuliffe, chosen to represent the classroom in space. That detail turned the launch into a national event. It wasn't only space enthusiasts watching. In countless schools, students sat in front of TVs, following the countdown like it was a celebration. At first, everything looks exactly the way it's supposed to. The roar of the engines, the towering plume of smoke, the shuttle rising cleanly off the pad into the bright Florida sky. The commentators keep talking, the mission control team tracks the numbers, and the country watches with that familiar mix of pride and excitement that made spaceflight feel like the future was getting closer. And then, without warning, time seems to break. About 73 seconds after liftoff, the shape of Challenger collapses into something that doesn't make sense. An expanding cloud, 2 trails splitting apart, a flash that doesn't resemble any normal stage of flight. For a moment, people watching at home try to force a simple explanation onto what they're seeing. A camera artifact, a maneuver, a harmless anomaly. But almost immediately, the tone changes. The voices on air hesitate. The communications turn confused. And you realize this isn't a minor problem. It's a catastrophe unfolding live, with no way to stop the broadcast and no way to look away. It's one of those moments where television stops being a window onto the news and becomes the place where an entire nation learns, at the exact same second, that the unthinkable just happened.
The events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering.
The question that follows is blunt and unavoidable. How can a vehicle built for space fail so violently, so quickly, right in front of everyone? The investigations that came after focused on a specific vulnerability, an issue in the joints of one of the solid rocket boosters, particularly the seals that were supposed to keep the system airtight under extreme pressure. That morning, temperatures were unusually low, and the cold affected how those seals performed at the worst possible time. From there, the sequence moves fast. Hot gases escaping, the structure compromised, and a chain of events that ends in the shuttle's breakup. But what makes the Challenger disaster so deeply unsettling isn't only the technical cause. It's what the tragedy revealed about decision-making, about warning signs that didn't carry enough weight, and how schedule pressure and expectations can influence choices that should be governed by safety alone. Challenger became a turning point. It changed NASA's procedures. It reshaped public trust. It forced a new conversation about risk and accountability. And it left behind an image that never really fades. A day that was supposed to celebrate the future turned into the moment when the future, live on television, seemed to stop cold. On January 22, 1987, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a press conference that looked like any other suddenly became one of the most controversial and disturbing moments ever captured on American television. Robert Bud Dwyer, the state treasurer, stepped in front of a room packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. He was under immense pressure. He had been convicted on corruption and fraud charges, and the sentencing ahead of him could mean years in prison. But that morning, Dwyer insisted he was innocent, and he wanted to speak directly to the public, almost as if the live broadcast could become his final court of appeal. At first, everything feels strangely ordinary. He reads from prepared pages, makes statements, thanks his family and the people who supported him. And that normal tone is part of what makes the entire moment so unsettling, because no one in that room seems truly ready for what comes next. Then Dwyer pulls out an envelope, and after that, an object that at first, some people mistake for something harmless. Maybe paperwork, maybe some kind of prop. But it's a gun. A few people immediately understand what's happening and try to intervene. You can hear voices telling him to stop. Someone moves toward him, but it's too fast, and the room is too chaotic. In a matter of seconds, right in front of live cameras, Dwyer takes his own life. For the people watching at home, and for the people in that room, it's total shock. There's no editing, no clean cutaway, no buffer. It's live television at its most brutal, when reality crashes straight through every rule that broadcasting is supposed to have. And what happens afterward is almost as significant as the act itself. Some stations cut away immediately. Others aired most of it, or all of it, and within hours the country was arguing about a huge question. How much should television show? Where is the line between informing the public and traumatizing them? And what happens when the news is literally an irreversible moment that cameras captured before anyone had time to stop it? In the Dwyer case, that press conference became a lasting case study in journalism ethics and in the value of broadcast delay, the technical buffer that can allow stations to cut away from extreme content in real time. But the story doesn't end with the most shocking image, because surrounding that moment is a complicated context. A man insisting on his innocence, a conviction already in place, a family devastated, and a public forced to confront the reality of mental collapse under intense pressure. Some people remember him as a corrupt politician who chose a final escape. Others see him as a desperate man who wanted to leave a message in his last act. Either way, the core point remains the same. That day, live television didn't just document a press conference. It captured the moment when broadcasting lost control, and millions of people saw something they were never meant to see, with no warning and no choice. That's why the Bud Dwyer case is remembered not only as a personal tragedy, but as a turning point, one that permanently changed how news organizations think about what can happen when the camera is rolling and there's no time to stop reality.